Okay, so there you have it. You know that I can't post those 10, 12-minute videos like other people seem to be able to do. I don't know why I can't, but I can. So let's just go ahead and jump into what I do know, and that's that I have to make very short videos of limited duration so that they will eventually link up, and then I can get this out like I'd intended to for months now. One of the first characteristics of ACoAs that becomes very apparent is that they can only guess what normal behavior is. You see, as children, ACoAs never grew up in a semblance of a normal environment, and everything was in flux from day in to day out, and they had to roll with the punches. And so they get into a work environment where everything seems to have structure and order and is very functional. And that throws a ACoA for a loop, because what they have to do immediately is to be chameleon and try to fit in with what their perception of normal is. And that's based on who they interact with at the workplace. So, say an ACoA gets their first job, they're hooked up with a supervisor or a preceptor who's on their way out. They think that if they mimic the behaviors from the perceived orienter, that they're going to follow everything that's normal to that person, that they're going to be doing a good job. And that can get them into trouble. So for ACoAs, you have to do, in order to be functional in a work setting, ask questions to the person who's training you. How long have you been here? What are your accomplishments? Have you been written up? That way at least you know that you get to know the person enough to know whether or not it's somebody you should emulate or somebody you should steer clear of. Not knowing what normal is and having to guess at it, and then trying to pick up cues from other people, you just have to make sure that you're picking up your cues from the correct personnel. The other thing in trying to guess at what normal behavior is that you will see oftentimes other people coming in for their prescribed number of hours to work, and during that course of work you'll see them work some, play some, work some, play some, and then clock out and go home after their 40 hours or whatever their time's up in a work week. And your drive to please and to be accepted by other people, and most of all to find acceptance with those above you, just as you did with your parents, becomes almost a phenomenal feat, because you might work 45 or 50 hours in a work week, whereas the other people only work 40. And that's a two-edged sword. Either one, everybody thinks you're grandstanding and you're bucking for their jobs, or that you have abused the overtime rules and you're trying to put them out of business because you're using too much of their time and money, and you'll get fired. Or you can do so much extra work without being compensated and feel like you're being abused and exploited and burn out because you're just working too hard. So just taking that very first characteristic of not knowing what normal is and putting it into an adaptable, functional work setting really can cause or create a huge dilemma for ACoAs. You have to know what the boundaries are. Make sure that you start asking questions during your orientation in the first few days that you're there to find out what that corporate or what that company's philosophies are, what their values are, and what's appreciated by them. If they want people who work 8 hours a day period and no overtime unless it's approved, make sure that you follow that. But don't take anything to guesswork when you're an ACoA. It's one of the big ways that you'll either end up feeling like you've been walked over and get burnt out, or you'll piss off your boss or your supervisor and get written up and be on the fast track out. I think I have time for going over having difficulty following projects from beginning to end, which is the second characteristic of an ACoA. And that's very self-explanatory. All your life as a child, your parents always started things, or the alcoholic parent always started things but never completed that task. True? Absolutely. So that's not abnormal behavior for you. And unless you can redevelop that ability to take things through from beginning to completion, you're not going to succeed in the workforce. You'll sabotage yourself because you'll be too embarrassed to come out and say, I've bitten off more than I can chew, and I'm not going to complete this job before the deadline. It's very important that you communicate and make sure that you let your supervisor become aware if you're having trouble getting a project through to completion. Ask for help, ask for guidance, and don't be ashamed to explain the situation. As a child, my parents very rarely took a project from beginning to end, and therefore I'm having the same difficulty with this project since this is my first job. And you'll find that just by embarrassing yourself just that little bit to speak the truth, that they might just respect you for it, and you won't be so inclined to not finish tasks if you know that every time you do that you're going to have to pull somebody aside and explain it to them. So hopefully that is a 4-minute video on the first 2 characteristics of ACoAs, just to give you a quick glimpse into how those characteristics can impact on self-sabotaging. One more thing, people self-sabotage themselves very subconsciously, and they tend to go from job to job to job. They can be 45 years old and not be considered settled into a career path. And certainly if you catch us at a young age, when you're in your early teens or early 20s, if you get a hold of this bull and get it by the horns quick enough, you can have a very successful long-term relationship in the workforce with an organization, and it can be immensely rewarding.